Hello, welcome again. Today we'll talk about authorial identity and argument building in literature reviews. A very important point to bear in mind when reviewing the literature is the fact that we're not just presenting information, we must have a clear authorial identity. In other words, we must analyze and criticize the information because we're going to use it in a persuasive way in order to support the arguments that we're going to construct in our paper. That is, we must express a point of view and build different kinds of arguments that support our ideas. And of course, we do this by means of academic connectors, which is the main point of this lesson. Now, when you write academic texts, you need to go beyond the so and also, and you must use what we call academic connectors. There are different kinds of connectors, like subordinators, sentence connectors, and phrase linkers, and they all have different functions and different meanings that we can use in order to express our point of view in a successful way. Let's look at some of them. We have, first of all, some linkers of addition. For example, in the category of connectors, we have furthermore, or in addition, or moreover, and we have phrase linkers such as in addition to. And on the other hand, with adversative connectors, we have subordinators like although, or even though, or despite the fact that. We have sentence connectors such as however, nevertheless, and we have phrase linkers such as despite or in spite of. We can also express cause and effect, such as with because or since, and of course we can use some sentence connectors such as therefore, as a result, consequently, hence, and thus. And of course, phrase linkers like because of, due to, or as a result of can also express cause and effect. Now, in the category of clarification, we can use connectors such as in other words, or that is, or i.e., and we can express contrast by using while or whereas, and sentence connectors such as in contrast, however, on the other hand, conversely, and we can use phrase linkers such as unlike. To express illustration, we can use for example or for instance, and finally for intensification, we can use on the contrary, as a matter of fact, or in fact. So remember, a good piece of academic writing is one that integrates a varied use of these kind of connectors in order to enhance the communicative purposes of the text. I have a little word in the use of these connectors with the appropriate punctuation, because sometimes we use the connectors but we do not use the correct punctuation, and that is because we cannot make a clear difference between subordinators, connectors, and phrase linkers. So I'm going to tell you what they are all about, and I'm going to show you some examples. Let's begin with subordinators. Subordinators join two sentences. One is the main sentence and the other is the subordinate sentence. These ones are separated with a comma. And the position that the subordinator is going to take is variable because it could go in the first or in the second sentence. Here are two examples. Although they are motivated, comma, students cannot learn. Or we can say, students cannot learn, comma, although they are motivated. Now let's see how connectors work. Connectors join also two sentences, but the difference is that these sentences are separated by a period or a semicolon. And something also that is very different from subordinators is that connectors always go on the second sentence. Here is a pair of examples. Students are motivated, period, however, comma, they cannot learn. Or, students are motivated, semicolon, however, comma, they cannot learn. Now, let's look at the first kind of linking words and expressions. These are called phrase linkers. And phrase linkers are very special because they join a noun or a verb phrase to a sentence. They go at the beginning, or they could go in the second part, but something very important that we need to remember is that when they go at the beginning, the noun or the verb phrase must be followed by a comma. Let's see the two different kind of ways in which we can do this. Let's look at these two examples. Despite the motivation, comma, students cannot learn. But if I move despite at the end, I will say students cannot learn despite the motivation. So in this case, we do not use a comma. So it is very important that you remember this appropriate punctuation and the kind of words or phrases or sentences that each of these linking phrases and expressions are going to be used with. We have subordinators, we have connectors, and we have phrase linkers. In the table that I showed you before, I show you the appropriate punctuations so that you have a little clue of how you can use them. Now I will show an example of how we can use connectors in order to build arguments. Let's suppose that we have this information. John is very old and ugly, and John is also filthy rich. We have this other information about a guy named Peter, and about him we can say that he's young and handsome, he's very poor. Now, if we just express the information that we have, we will use it like this. John is very old, ugly, and filthy rich. In this case, we have no point of view, we're just presenting the information. This is the kind of things that we're not going to do in a literature review. In a literature review, we want to have a point of view. So, let's see how we can express different points of view and build arguments using connectors. Number one, John is old and ugly. However, he is filthy rich. So in this case, what I am saying is not just that he has those characteristics. What I'm saying here is that he is old and ugly. But that is not important because he has a lot of money. So I'm placing the importance on the fact that he is rich. I have a clear point of view. We can say the opposite. John is filthy rich. Nevertheless, he is old and ugly. And in this case, I'm saying the opposite. I am saying that the most important thing for me is the fact that he's old and ugly, and it is not important for me if he has money or not. I can also use some examples and I can build an argument. I can say, John has some qualities. For example, he is filthy rich. On the other hand, he has the unwanted characteristics of being old and ugly. And then again, I am going beyond this simple information. I am expressing a point of view and I am developing my ideas. The next one, in spite of John's age and ugliness, he is filthy rich. Consequently, women love him. So if you see in this case, I am setting off the fact that John is old and ugly because I am saying that the most important thing is that he has a lot of money, and I'm also establishing a cause and consequence relationship between the fact that he has money and that women love him. So I am building an argument and I am expressing a point of view with the help of academic connectors. I have some other examples. Let's look at them. Despite the fact that John is old and ugly, women love him because he's filthy rich. Then again, I have here a restriction. He's old and he's ugly. Okay, that is something bad. But I'm saying too that women love him because he is filthy rich. So I'm establishing a cause and a consequence relationship between the money and the fact that women love him. I can say something similar. Despite John's age and ugliness, he is filthy rich, and consequently, women love him. Now, I can also compare and contrast John and Peter, if you remember Peter. And I can say something like this. While Peter is young and handsome, John is old and ugly. And then I can emphasize this information. In fact, John is a freak of nature. So if you see, I am emphasizing that not only is he old and ugly, but actually when you see him, it's just a freak. So the fact that I'm using connectors here helps me to compare Peter to John, and I'm emphasizing also the fact that John is not very handsome. But I can say the opposite, and I can talk in favor of John, and I can say something like this: unlike John, who is filthy rich, Peter is an abbreviated piece of nothing. As a result, women prefer John. So if you see in this case, I am contrasting the two people, and I am saying that Peter may be handsome, but he has nothing, he has no money. And as a result of this, women prefer to date John. So if you see here, if we look at these last two examples, we can see that I can express exactly the opposite point of view using connectors. So the information is there, but it is not just presenting the information, but showing a clear point of view about it and building and developing arguments that are going to help me to support my point of view, because the point of view is mine, the information is there, but I can use it and I can develop my ideas in a way that this information can be useful to support my research. So when we develop our paragraphs in a literature review, academic connectors are going to come in handy in order to introduce, analyze, and present the information. And remember, the structure of paragraphs in the literature review is very, very important. This rhetorical structure needs to be respected. We introduce a concept or we make a point, we call that the topic sentence, then we support it with as many references as we have, and then if we have some information that contradicts a point of view, we're going to introduce, and we have to introduce all of this contradictory information that we have. And also we need to compare and contrast the points of view to make sure that we are not just following somebody's ideas, but that we are using the information in an appropriate way according to our own point of view. And finally, we must write a conclusion to the sentence restating the topic sentence. Now, even though we need to acknowledge that all of the paragraphs in the literature review must comply with this rhetorical structure that we outlined in the previous lesson, individual paragraphs in a literature review may have different kinds of functions. For example, in some of them we're going to define a concept and we're going to present like different definitions of the concept in order to discuss them and come to a conclusion. In other cases, we're going to have different classifications of a same phenomenon, but maybe taking into account the different ways in which different authors organize or classify this information or this concept. Sometimes we're going to be comparing and contrasting different terms, like when we talk about, for example, individual bilingualism versus diglossia or social bilingualism. Sometimes we're going to present a chronology or development of research facts, and sometimes, for example, we may present research results. So even though different paragraphs may have different functions, we need to be sure that the rhetorical structure remains the same. We are developing an idea, and in order to develop an idea, we must follow that structure, which makes sure that your stream, that your thoughts, that your ideas are actually developed, that you're presenting some information with a critical point of view and not just copying and pasting or creating a collage of different authors' ideas. So basically that's what we have to say about academic connectors, and we need just to remember that if we want to be successful at expressing our points of view and building our arguments, that we need connectors. And connectors are going to provide coherence to your text, but they are also going to assert your authorial identity. You're going to show yourself by means of using academic connectors. Another thing is, of course, that academic connectors will make a great difference between writing just a collage of ideas, copying and pasting, or producing persuasively effective writing. And finally, I need to remind you that this is C2 writing. We are writing at a C2 level, and of course, C2 involves a varied and effective use of different kinds of connectors. You have to go beyond simple conjunctions such as and or but, or simple linking words such as also. You have to use a variety and effective range of academic connectors. That's what is going to make your writing effective and powerful. Well, that's all we had to say about authorial identity and argument building in literature reviews. The thing that you have to go now is go to your task sheet and complete your task. Good luck and see you next time.